And we're on. Welcome to Sales Chatter Live, where we're talking about positioning, the ultimate battle for your mind. And the question becomes, how are you going to get yourself seen in a crowded market? Brother, book two, baby, book two. Um, Anything you want to say about it before we get going here?
Yeah, no, first and foremost, man, I'm really excited. First and foremost, it's Friday. We get to enjoy
Yeah.
what a week it's been. Congratulations on your amazing speech last night. I heard it went amazing with
And
everybody who was in the
congratulations
audience.
on your event yesterday as well.
Thanks, Red. Thanks. We're leveling up. We're positioning ourselves to be in the crowds that we want to be in, man. Is that a cool segue
That's
or
it.
something like that? But
That's it.
I'm
That's a
excited.
pretty damn good segue, brother.
It's doing awesome, man. And you know what? I want to give kudos to you and give you your flowers on this because I was telling you off air that I've never read an advertising book, so I am really open to this, open minded, and so far for the audience out there, I cannot wait to dive in this with you because they're not heavy chapters, heavy
Mhm.
reading. Full transparency with everybody, like I couldn't find the book on Audible. I want to listen to the audiobook, but I got the physical book. But I've actually been because it was only like 5 or 6 pages, I was reading it off my iPhone and taking it
Yeah.
like an email, taking like a text. So I'm excited, man. Like this is gonna be an awesome book.
That's actually a great way to do it. Did you get the paperback or did you get the digital book?
I got both. I got both. So I
Okay,
wanted
good.
to. So firstly, I thought that it was gonna be like my Amazon order didn't come till yesterday, so I was able to kind of go through it. And then when I was like, okay, what's kind of funny? When I went online, I just went to the you know how you can preview books.
Yep,
So like before you buy it, right on Kobo. So
yep.
I hit the preview and I'm like, wait a second, the first 3 chapters are here because they're so easy to
Yes, there you go.
digest, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, screenshot. So I'm excited. Like I had the physical book upstairs, excited to do that. But I wish there was an audiobook, man. Maybe I gotta do deep diving, but it
Yeah.
wasn't on
Well, I don't
Audible.
know why there wouldn't be. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, for all of you watching, or if you're listening at your leisure after this is live, this is called Positioning: The Battle for Your Mind, and it's by Al Reese and Jack Trout. And it's how to be seen and heard in an overcrowded marketplace. And one of the big reasons, Ryan, where I thought this book would be great after The Power of Now, because we learned how to go inside. We learned how to understand the power of now and how to get things done in the now. And then the second question becomes, now that we have this new philosophy and we've really dug deep into like what we want, why we want it, how we want it, and how to get there, how do
Yeah.
we start getting heard in obviously our market, which is super overcrowded at the time, right? Like
Yeah.
custom prospects saying they get more calls and da-da-da, and it just seems like this book is going to be a great fit. And I mean, just going through, I've been through the first couple of chapters already, but it's I love the fact that obviously starts, what is positioning all about?
Yeah.
And you just, even in the first chapter, it says, right, to be successful today, you have to touch base with reality. The one and only reality that counts is what's already in the prospect's mind. And for us, we've
Yeah.
talked about this, right? So it's pretty cool how when you talk about things and then you pick up a book and it kind of um, validates what we've been
Yes.
sharing with the audience, right? Is how do we start the conversation that's going on in the prospect's mind? So before we get into it, just give me your thoughts on this first chapter. What kind of things really stuck out to you? And then maybe let's dive in deep and help the audience with some strategies behind it, or what you're going to do behind it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think with first and foremost, like we said, like the chapters are very easy to digest, so we can go in a little bit more deep with it, right? Because from there, so just a couple things that were really off the top of my mind was like understanding like positioning is not to create something new and different. How many times are we
Mhm.
seeing new and improvement offers, right? Like I just bought a Scrub Daddy, the sponge, and it says new and improved. And it's just like, how can it be new and improved, right? Like it can't be brand new and then improved on it, right? So I thought that, setting the intentions from like the first page was really gripped me in. And we talk about hooks, when we consume
Yeah.
videos, when we consume music, it's always that 15 to 20 seconds. So I really like that part. When you start talking about the over communicated society, when you have a per capita consumption in advertising in America, which is about like $376 a year, right? That's kind of like the average. I don't know when this book was written, so the figures could be a little bit give or take. But
Yeah.
when you look at when I look at this book already for the first couple of chapters, automatically I start thinking about the Super Bowl, because so many companies, they spend so much just to get like that 15 to 20 seconds, right? And most of the times it's companies that you already know of, like they've already have like brand familiarity with. And I thought that was spectacular there, and we'll dive into there. But like I said, the first two pages was extremely cool for me to kind of dive completely into it. And learning about to be creative, to create something that hasn't been existed in the mind, is to become more difficult, if not impossible. We all
Yeah.
have these thoughts. I think there's a study, we get over 50,000 thoughts a day, right? So to think that we're original, or we have this great idea that's like, think it's like somebody's had that thought already, right? But the
Yeah.
difference is going to be in the execution, which I'm pretty sure they're going to get to throughout this book as well. But yeah, those are my key takeaways, and this is only from like 3 pages, so I'm excited.
So one of the things I read over and over and over was the three pieces of over-communicated society, oversimplified mind, and oversimplified message.
Yeah.
And I read those three pieces of chapter one over and over and over because I was like, what do you like? How, working with some of the tools we work with. And I've shared with you some of the struggles where I've had to like whittle things down to the simplistic,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's part of our nature as humans to try and overcomplicate things for the most part. And like getting the attention of people, simplifying, oversimplifying a message. I'm finding it easier, but it's still like I got so much to say. I want to say it. I want to say it. I want to, and
Yeah.
it's like that over communicating, if you will. I think it's hence the reason we see things like TikTok exploded,
Yes.
right? And then the reason it did is because how can I consume this in literally seconds
Yep.
as opposed to minutes? And it's funny because over the last little bit, I've also been, me, I go down YouTube rabbit holes all the time.
Mhm.
And it's like I won't watch a video over 15 minutes. Like it's got to be a really good one. And then I start looking at the time and I'm like, do I really want to sit here for 30 minutes? Right.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
like a conversation you and I are having in the background about the show is like, do we bring it down to 15 minutes? Do we,
Yeah.
like that consumable piece? So it's simplifying that to use up less time. And I love the fact that he addressed it, pretty much the last three things in chapter one. And the last thing he started to is he says, the best, and he talked about the oversimplified message. The best approach to take in our communication society is is the oversimplified message. And
Yeah.
he says, in communication, as in architecture, less is more. You have to sharpen your message to cut into the mind. You have to jettison the ambiguities, simplify the message, and then simplify it some more if you want to make a long lasting impression. Now, how many of you out there hear that and go, that goes directly against like almost everything you do?
Yeah. It's supposed to challenge that, right? And I love that so much, what you said. And you mentioned TikTok, like you've been able to kind of find that sometimes certain things in life are just ahead of its time, right? Like I don't know if you
Yes.
remember this, but Vine was a big thing back in the day, and that was only 7 seconds. And then Vine died out, and then everybody moved like to Instagram, and they moved to different places. And you have, like you're talking about, that 15-minute video. I'm the same way too. I won't consume it. Yeah, I've never consumed it. Here's the reason why, Dan. Um, I feel like when we compare it to something else, right? So if there's a 30-minute YouTube video, I know even now there's like you can watch like an hour and a half or an hour video. I comparing it to watching like my favorite, like an episode of The Office or an episode of New Girl, or maybe watching a show that's an hour long, like Supernatural, whatever it is. And I'm like, would I rather watch that episode of Supernatural, which is amazingly produced, and there's a storyline, there's all that stuff, or would I rather watch this guy doing a vlog of just walking around in nature and stuff like that for 30 minutes, right? And for me, I'm like, I would rather go with the overly produced thing because I feel like that's more beneficial in my time. But Dan, I love that you said that, because we kind of get that oversimplified message, as you were kind of talking about here, when we're like, okay, well, I want to say all these things, and it always goes back to prospecting for me every time I feel like thinking about oversimplifying message. I'm Ryan with XY company. We have X trucks in this area. We've been in business for X whatever, and it's just like it becomes like 2 or 3 paragraphs, and you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm like, I
Yep.
don't care anymore. Straight to the straight to trash, and thankfully like spam
Mhm.
filters. But you and I have always talked about this when we got to a point where we just want one thing answered in an email or one thing answered on a phone call, one thing answered in a text. That's when it gets more simpler because it's just like for me, I don't know about you, man, and this is not logistics in general. It's just like everybody else. But has there been times then that you've sent an email to somebody with like 2 questions and they'll just answer one? And just
Yes.
and it's very clear. It's very clear. It's
Yes.
like, do you want
Yeah.
pizza tomorrow? Do you like pineapple on your pepperoni? You just get a reply, yes, and you're like,
Yes.
wait a minute. It's just
Yeah.
like, give me that. So I
Yeah.
love that it's breaking down for like our human nature. So always kind of focus on that message. And I love what you talked about at the beginning. Like we'll talk about this and talk about strategies as well that people can like use in their logistics career as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you know everything happens for a reason, right? And I think rereading this book at this time
Yeah.
when I'm walking through live these challenges of simplifying the message, simplifying your message. I mean, we're talking a lot about marketing for Bridger, and it's how do we simplify the message? How do we really create an impact with the message, but not make it, 12 paragraphs that somebody's literally got to feel like they've read a book. So they, in order to like read your mission statement or whatever. And
Yeah.
it's like I started thinking about some of the message simplification, right? Like think about it like this. And again, this is more marketing than sales, but sales today is a lot of marketing. So think of it like this. If you see that triangle with the flash through it, you immediately think of Doritos,
Yeah.
right? Like it's you can see that logo and the message has been clear in our head by that visual, right? You see the square with the play symbol and it's red and white, and you immediately like that message is YouTube,
YouTube. Yeah.
right? So I start thinking about how do we like almost create that bat signal. When the bat signal goes in the sky, that's a message, and it's a very simplified message. Help, right? I start thinking of things like that and saying, how can we, as a company, how can I, as a salesperson, how can we help the salespeople out there kind of have that bat signal? And
Yeah.
it's a simplified message. And once you simplify that message and continue with that message becomes that bat symbol. So something will trigger somebody and they'll remember that message.
Yeah, and I think Dan, you mentioned some great points there. Whatever your mission statement is, or whatever your slogan, or whatever your logo is, everything that once you decide what that is, everything you do afterwards has to relate back to that. Like
Yes.
for like you look at McDonald's, right? McDonald's is like home of like no, it's Burger King, for example, home of the Whopper. You think if they took off the Whopper off their menu, would they still be successful? Like full
Yes.
transparency, does anybody really go into Burger King? I haven't been Burger King for a while, but they were like, hey, I'm going to go to Burger King for a fish sandwich, or I'm just going to go there for the fries. These are just different add-ons. But when you relate like Whopper, like to Burger King, you talk about like YouTube, right? Just imagine if YouTube started doing like, it became like a photo website, sorry, a photo social media where you share photos. I know you can do posts and stuff like that, but just imagine they switched away from videos. Then it's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, my connection to that is completely different. And coming back to Bridger, for everyone who's listening live here or even on the podcast as well, it's like, okay, well, we have this great product. How we just make this simple? Like, what is the mission statement here, and what
Yeah.
is everything afterwards coming back to that simple mission? And like you said, in terms of getting to that point where you get that brand recognition, this is going to be great for like this book is going to be great for Bridger. It's going to be great for everybody who
Yeah.
is. You hear that word personal brand quite a bit, but like you said, Dan, just now, like sales, it's coherent, it's congruent with marketing, right? So most of the
Yes.
things that we think that we're doing, we're doing marketing, and understand the personas as well. I'm looking forward to see if they get into personas in this book, and don't spoil it for me. But I'm looking forward to kind of see if that kind of gets into there. But Dan, as you kind of mentioned, kind of going through that yourself. Out of curiosity, because you read this book before, when did you read this book, and what point in your life were you? I'd love to kind of see
So
that
I
difference.
read this book, got to be 5 years ago.
Hmm.
And like I had nothing highlighted in chapter one, right? And now, if you look, like I've got this highlighted, I've got that highlighted, I've got
Right.
that highlighted. Like all of a sudden, these sections, and even in the introductions, like I've got things highlighted and written down in the introduction that I didn't have 5 years ago. Where my head was, Ryan, I have no idea. But I know I was in sales and I knew marketing was the better way to sell.
Mm.
And, and I think this is something that we're going to probably um, get into more and more as the book goes on, because people are going to have the question, right? Like, I work for a company. How do I market? Like the
Yeah.
company markets. How do I market? And this is going to go into it. But I'll tell you, when I first read it, um, I didn't even put tabs.
Mm.
So it must, as much as I'm thinking in my head, oh yeah. I was like, I was there. I wasn't, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because when I first picked it up, it's I start remembering things as I'm reading. And I'm like, why wouldn't I have? And it's amazing that you asked that question, because it's one of the questions I asked myself when I reread this chapter.
Mm.
So I said, why, like, what was I, where was my mindset? Where was my level of understanding? Because that's powerful. Like the simplified message. Ryan, full transparency, I've talked myself out of more sales than I've talked myself into.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Full
I can see
disclosure.
that.
And I know that. And the ego side of me years ago wouldn't allow that to, no, they didn't. I mean, I did everything
It's their
that I
fault. Yeah.
needed to. I
Yeah.
mean, I sold them. It's them, not me. And it's like now I sit back and I say, holy good Lord, I had that sale like an hour earlier.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
an hour later, I don't have the sale. It's like we do it all the time. I think we talk ourselves out of a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, and you start hitting those like keywords and things like that, and just full transparency, I've done the same too. No matter what. So just for everybody who's watching out there, we're all going through this journey together. Like
Yeah.
I said this many times on this podcast. I wish I can call a consumer and be like, "Hey, you're Ryan from Sales Chatter. We heard so much about you. Let's start doing the business now. What do you want? 100 loads a week? It's
Yeah.
once I get to that point, it'll be pretty cool. But I don't think anybody does. But like one thing that they talked about specifically in the chapter that I really like is changing that. Changing that positioning in the consumer's mind, kind of.
Yes.
And I wonder if this book is going to get into a little bit of influence as well, because that's what I took away from it. It's not like trying to influence them. Hey man, give me a shot, give me a shot, give me a shot. It's just like you keep on making these deposits in them, right? Like be more than a freight broker, be more than whatever. And as you mentioned too, Dan, like if you're a salaried rep working with a company, leverage your marketing team if you guys have one. Find out what other people are doing and just really sell on that. Like don't be someone who sells on everything. If there's a special things, if you guys do dry vans really good, pick the niche customers that fit within there and then sell the crap out of that. There's so
Yeah.
much in this industry for everybody to go over and for able to like advertise and position yourself in their minds of being the expert. You want to be the one of zero. That's a new term that I've been kind of looking at as well. But Dan, I love that you shared that, when you read this the first time, like 5 years ago, you didn't highlight anything. And like now you're going through, you're like, okay, highlight. It's just like, you might going to turn that into a painting like after we finish this
Yeah.
book, right?
Yeah. Well, Ryan, here I'll add to what you said there, because I think you've hit something that we might not have expressed in our last book for book club. If for all you sales reps out there, grab the book and maybe get one for your marketing team,
Hmm.
for the one person you want to work with in your marketing team, and sit down and talk to them about the marketing that's going to help you get more business.
Yeah.
And Damon and I were talking about this yesterday about you know commercials in these bigger brands like Coca-Cola, and where is the real, like, where do they find the ROI in commercials? Like, do they work? Is it more just spend the money on it so the brand's always in your face? Is there instant value? Is there future value? Is there, like, there's all these questions. And Ryan, I see a lot of companies posting on social media, mostly LinkedIn for companies, and it's the same thing. We do this, we do that. We're looking for great people. We're like like, to me, that's not a message that breaks through anything.
Yeah.
Like anything. It's almost like a blur as you're going through the timeline. And if somebody's posting, making a post, I don't know, I find it like, and again, this is just off the top of my head, right? As a company, if you have a very strong presence from Dallas, Texas to Toronto, hypothetically, right? What would be the ROI? And it's something that I'd love to run a test on, and I think I will. Of putting out like LinkedIn ads that this is our specialty, Dallas, Texas to Toronto,
Yep.
to every person with a logistics manager, traffic manager, VP of traffic, VP of logistics, whatever title on LinkedIn, and running an ad specifically to them, and doing that instead of a generic post. Now you're getting more direct. You're simplifying the message, and like right away from chapter 1, simplifying the message. And so for all you sales reps out there, I look at it and I say, okay, maybe you don't have the funds to do like ads and marketing or the knowledge. So what about positioning yourself with a simplified message instead of this is what we do, this is our strength.
Yeah.
This is our strength. This is our strength. And I think, Ryan, the more you talk about your strength, the more that position will start flowing through people in the areas. And eventually somebody will find you. And when they find you, it's a message direct to them, entering their mind where they are, as opposed to a generic, we're the best broker out there. You know what I mean? Because everybody positions it like that.
Yeah, I feel like there's a twofold to that, right? Because like I understand the part of like doing generic kind of posts for like social media because like they really got to get it done. You know, I feel like as a company standpoint, they have to make their presence known, and especially in the logistics supply chain kind of like influencer kind of space on LinkedIn, right? Like you have your names that are pretty efficient and stuff like that. And I think, you know, if I was, and maybe we'll talk about this on a future episode of Sales Chatter, you know, like what would I do if I was building my LinkedIn page? You know, what are the things that I would subscribe to? What are the conversations that I would pay attention to, right? Because I know with Convoy going down, like, what was it, 2-3 days ago? That's like the key buzzword. And it's just like when you kind of understand the algorithm, right? Like I'm personally fed up. Like me personally, it sucks. I always preface by saying it sucks for whatever happens to like companies when they shut down and they go bankrupt and stuff like that. But does that truly affect me? Like, I'll be honest with you, brother. Like I've never heard of Convoy before, just because of like they would never be something that I would be subscribed to or something like that, right? And even when Yellow and all that stuff went down, it's just like, oh my God, we want to talk about the buzzwords and get the algorithm and get the views and the likes. But if I was a sales rep kind of myself, kind of trying to get that message across to people, I kind of do it like a little bit, like a little kind of post, make those deposits, but then I start networking with people because I've gotten to the stage in my career, Dan, that there's a certain industry that I work in. I've had other like quote unquote competitors be like, hey, Ryan, I'm working on this lead. I can't help them. I know you can. Here's a phone number, right? So you get that resource of sharing leads and sharing different things. And, you know, that's where the collaboration kind of happens. And you kind of, I feel like when somebody gives you something, you know, you owe them, you like in their mindset. So you want to overcompensate. So you're like thinking, oh, let me go through my Rolodex of like customers that or prospects I can't hit or whatever, right? And be like, hey man, thank you for that. And let's go from there. So, you know, that oversimplified message that you talk about is just so important. And I think that's a great basis for this book to start off with, because how many times do we do that, right? And I think just keep it simple, right?
Yep. Keep it simple. The KISS method. Keep it simple, superstar.
I was called stupid. Yeah, I was called stupid.
You like how I changed that, eh, buddy? Simplified message, man. You know, it's you're right. And you know, obviously in closing, there is like I'm already into chapter 6 or 7, so I won't spoil it, but it gets right into things you want to hear about. So
you did spoil it.
I didn't say what. It's things you want to hear about. I'm going general.
I'm excited, man. I'm excited.
Do you want to close out today, buddy? Go for it.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody once again, whether you're listening to this live or you're listening on the podcast. We can't thank you guys enough for all your support that you show us. We see the messages, we see all the tags, we see all that amazing stuff, and you know, our mission here, as we're talking about our oversimplified message, our mission here is to help 10,000 reps hit $1 million, generate $1 million in GP in less than 12 months, right? So everything everything that we do is towards back to that mission. So it's always going to be that. So with that being said, everybody have an amazing weekend. I can't wait. Next week, I think Dan and I will talk about, because the chapter 1 was so short, we want it to be the one episode to be on chapter 1. Possibly we'll get into 2 chapters going forward on Friday. And yeah, just tune in, just ride the wave with us, because we got some pretty cool stuff coming up for the rest of October and for the rest of the year.
Done.